Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel called zuzanareacts, where I learn all things Bharat with your help, and I just share my Slovak point of view. Slovakia is in Central Europe, just an FYI. And today I am actually super excited because we're going to explore the future of India together. We're going to explore more like a what I would call a green revolution, or like energy perhaps evolution in India. As this is an hour-long video, I'm going to do it in two parts. So this is the part one. But before we jump into today's video,
please like this video and click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you so much for your support.
So I say, let's get into it. I'm super curious because obviously there are green or energy initiatives also happening here, and I'm curious to know what India's future looks like in the space. And yeah, maybe there are even some similarities between what we're doing, what you guys are doing. So let's get into it.
70% of our vehicular traffic on the roads today is two-wheelers and three-wheelers.
Right.
And my submission to you is the bulk of them will move to replaceable batteries. 2047, that is the Viksit Bharat target, is only 23 years away.
Yes.
If you're 20 years now, you'll be 43 years. You'll be in the prime of your youth. Today, you will find that you are in a position to...
I love how he said 43 years old is prime of your youth. So interesting. Good to know. But I love what he is saying, because here are definitely like Green Deal initiatives, which I actually really know nothing about. But recently our Prime Minister was talking about the fact that how because Slovakia manufactures cars a lot, how we need to start already building for that batteries, electric batteries for the cars or whatever is going to be, because it strongly requires changes to infrastructure, etc., for us as a country to be able to like supply the energy for production, etc. So I'm super curious.
Determine what the contours of that Viksit Bharat will be. In other words, you will not only be the beneficiary of that Viksit Bharat, but you will be the contributor and you will be shaping that Viksit Bharat. I think that is the main thing. We have succeeded in moving 250 million people out of what is called multidimensional poverty. I'm not the kind of person who drops names, but I've had the privilege of knowing the Prime Minister much earlier.
I see.
I've known him not only when I was a diplomat, I've known him even in the earlier, before I became a civil servant.
I see.
He's totally dedicated. He works, I think, 18, 19 hours a day, non-stop, 7 days a week, 12 days. But he has a commitment to the country and a passion with which he follows that, as a result of which you see the transformation in India. I mean, the India of 2014 and the India of 2024 are very different. And the rate at which we are going, the India of 2029 will be even more different. We are going, the India of 2029 will be even more different.
Hardeep Singh Puri, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you so much for hosting me in your beautiful office, sir. So, sir, let's talk energy. The world has changed a lot in the past 20 years. Tremendous transformation in terms of energy politics, supply chains and all that. And you have been a very strong advocate of reforming energy politics and supply chains. So what is the role that India plays in this?
On a note of humility, and I want to start on a note of total humility with you, the role India plays and the role I play are not necessarily the same. I just so happen to be the Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas. I've been associated with this ministry since, I think, 7th July 2021. So it's nearly 3 years, but a little short. There are 2 or 3 defining impressions that I have about the global energy situation. And I don't think that an experience of 3 years makes me a pandit on it. But certainly, as somebody who's a hands-on professional, I can share with you my defining impressions on what is the real issue in the global energy market.
Okay.
To begin with, I think one needs to acknowledge the importance of energy as a driver of economic growth.
Yes.
The submission I make to you is that you cannot imagine a situation where economic growth can take place, or if it is even possible to take place, without the requisite energy.
Indeed.
The concept of energy, what constitutes energy, has changed over the last few centuries.
Yes.
And I think the transformation in the coming decades will be of an even more basic nature. We started with very basic things. Mankind at the point of evolution used firewood, learned the use of turning to nature in what was available. We went after that to coal, to steam, and then that is how the process started. There is a belief, and I think it's well founded, that whoever controls the energy may not control the world, but is able to enrich whichever country controls or whichever group controls energy. They are able to enrich themselves. I'm not saying necessarily to the detriment of the others, but certainly they get a commanding position.
Right.
So you had a situation where if you take 7-8 year periods, and I take 7-8 year periods, I did this analysis 2 years ago when the Modi government had been around for 8 years. Today is 10 years. Take a 10-year period. When I was a student in the university and you talked about petrol prices, and that's when the first oil shock came.
I see.
The first oil shock, by the way, was not so much an oil shock. It was a news shock. Somebody realized that energy or petrol, which is available for a fraction of any cost, suddenly could rise. Okay. If you look into the geopolitical situation, in fact, one of the most disturbing trends that we get around is one, there is no shortage of energy. Shortages are deliberately created in order to upset the equilibrium between demand and supply, and in order to be able to keep the price up or to shoot the price up. If you were to look around to engage in a blame game, you will find, and this is very disturbing, that those who control the energy were not necessarily the ones who were wanting to drive up the price. In fact, the driving up the price also came from those who were actually import dependent, because they thought they could play a game. This is really the great game. You talk about great game geopolitically and other things, but this is the energy game. Something that should cost you meaning anyone who's in the exploration and production business, a total of $7-8 to take out a barrel, $10, $12 a barrel maximum. They want to price it at $100 a barrel.
Yes.
Wow.
Now, the infrastructural costs may be high. A lot of people have invested in terms of capital expenditure, may be high, but nothing justifies a situation where the cost of extraction of a barrel is $12, let's say even $15, to be sold at $100 or $130.
Yes.
Now I fast forward to that, and I come to what you call the traditional fossil fuel industry, which is essentially the extraction of crude oil and its refining in order to produce the petrol and diesel, which goes into your vehicles. Before this crisis, and I use the word crisis very carefully, I'm giving you a reference period. Let's say COVID was one reference point.
Yes.
If you agree to the analysis that COVID reared its ugly head as a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, much more serious than SARS, H1N1, swine flu, whatever. And this is more like the epidemic which came in 1918. Spanish flu. You take that as a reference period. What happened as a result of this pandemic? Economic activity came to a grinding halt.
Yes.
So when activity comes to a grinding halt, there is no demand for crude oil, and the price fell down to $19.56, if I remember correctly.
I see.
And then when economic activity lifted, it started going up. So if the timing of that is end 2019, I think more first few weeks of 2020, that goes on, and there's another shock or a disruption which comes when the Russians Ukrainian military action, that is February of 2022.
Yes.
During this reference period, at any given point of time, what you would call a good oil, crude oil, kacha tel, production was around 102 million barrels a day.
Okay.
Today, that 102 million barrels a day, thanks to voluntary cuts by OPEC Plus and other factors, has been reduced by about 5 million barrels to about 97 million. Production was around 102 million barrels a day.
Okay.
Today, that 102 million barrels a day, thanks to voluntary cuts by OPEC Plus and other factors, has been reduced by about 5 million barrels to about 97 million barrels today.
Okay.
So an artificial shortage has been created. Yet, in spite of that artificial shortage, prices have not gone up.
Okay.
I am told reliably that those who are responsible for the decision making, OPEC Plus, are invariably concerned that if they don't do production cuts, voluntary or otherwise, it will go on falling. Why? Because the economic recovery in the world is fragile. Europe is still in an uncertain state. The Chinese economy of late has begun to show some signs of getting up. But today, prices are in the range of $85 plus per barrel, a little higher than that. That is also on account of another factor, and that is that the tensions in the Red Sea area, where starting the immediate causation may be the attacks by the Houthis on commercial shipping. But the background factor is Israel, Gaza, and all that. And that is the situation. How long will fossil fuel remain? I am, as you are perhaps aware, a very strong advocate of the energy transition. I've been fortunate to work with a prime minister who, during his tenure, has pushed up the biofuel blending from 1.4% to about 12%, and is taking. We are, by the way, one of the highest biofuel blending countries in the world. We are doing more biofuel blending than even the United States because our base is bigger, and we are going to 20%. Now, and our feed is diverse. United States makes biofuel only from maize, but what is happening is we are making from sugar, maize. We are doing it from other places. I don't know the relative figures, but you know why I'm saying we are probably higher. We may be just short. I don't know. But my problem is, United States was always a big biofuel producer. When I was ambassador to Brazil, the Brazilians prided themselves in being the pioneers in biofuels, and the Americans, in order to stop Brazilian biofuels coming in there, they imposed a duty of 56 cents a barrel. By 2025, end of calendar year, we are hoping, or end of fiscal year, take your pick, we are hoping to take this blending from 12% to 20%, which was the target for 2030. Simultaneously, you see electric vehicles now forming a prominent presence on your roads. But again, my submission to you is an electric vehicle is welcome because it doesn't throw out the toxicity on the roads onto the breathing public. But at the end of the day, if the grid is still gray, then electric vehicles don't have the same impact which they would have if the grid was entirely green. What are we looking at? We are looking at biofuels, 20% blending. We are looking at compressed biogas being used. We are looking at compressed natural gas, CNG. We are looking at green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is essentially the fuel of the future.
How so, please?
Let me explain. What do you need to get commercial scale green hydrogen? You need to begin with cheap clean energy, which means green energy, which means you must be able to produce a unit of solar, which is purely green, or any other green energy, for a little amount. We have already demonstrated that we can bring the cost of solar energy down from 25 cents to 3 cents. So we've done. Then you need an electrolyzer. An electrolyzer will split the atom, water. In other words, when you produce green energy, what you would get is just water vapor out. We have done this on a pilot scale. We have done it when I was Joint Secretary Navy. We used to do it in our submarines because a submarine is by definition a submerged vessel. So what happens? You can't get air there. So you take in the water, you use a catalyzer, electrolyzer, and you take the electrolyzer, you split the acid, and you breathe the air. What is the secret of success, or the recipe? I wouldn't say success because you need to reach that success. I keep repeating that the US Treasury Secretary, the Energy Secretary, Jennifer Granholm, mentioned to me that the ambition in green hydrogen is 1 for 1 for 1. What does that mean? 1 kilo of green hydrogen for $1 for 10 years. One, it being 10 years, you should be able to do that. Therefore, the challenge that we've got is how do you produce a kilo of green hydrogen at a lower cost? I think if you take the cost today, when I started in this ministry, it was about $3. Today, it is about $2.86. Even not, I'm not so sure because I am only dealing with claims. I have a lot of people who come because we're not testing those claims. I have no doubt that considering that every major manufacturer of electrolyzers is available in India now, either through a collaboration with an Indian entity, commercial entity, or on their own, or we have domestic indigenous people, BPCL, I think what was, which at the recent India Energy Week, they demonstrated an electrolyzer, which the Honorable Prime Minister saw. I have no doubt that the efforts which are on, without making a commitment, they will come down. If it's $2.86, it's $2.90 from 30 to 90. It'll come down. But I want to place before you a proposition. Let's say in the next 3-4 years, with all this effort, we are able to bring the cost of green hydrogen down to about $2.40 or $2.45 per kilo.
Okay.
What is the amount of money that you're spending on import of fossil fuels? $185 billion a year.
So, gosh, so many thoughts. I will leave them towards the end, but isn't that still very high? Because I think that around like anything over €1 here. So he says $250. So even if 250 is €1 now, or like dollar used to be now stronger these days than euro. It's extreme even here for the cost of the goods already skyrocketed when you have euro and something. So I can't imagine that being the cost. So I'm very curious what he's going to say next.
I mean, rough ballpark figure. I mean, if the consumption goes up, by the way, our Indian consumption of fuel is going up at 3 times the global average.
Indeed.
And if the price also goes up, then it'll be not 85. You'll be spending 200. And if the price of oil is not 85, but 100, then you're spending more than $200 billion on import. I make the proposition to you that if you have a policy decision to take, what would you rather do? Spend $185 billion on the import of toxic fossil fuels? Or would you say, all right, I'm diverting that money for the production of green hydrogen? And instead of, you wanted it $1, I mean, I'm sure if you put $200 billion in, I can bring the price down to close to that $1. What is the American, I'm fast forwarding, going sideways. What is the American Inflation Reduction Act? It is an absolutely clearly thought through system to encourage sustainable energy in the form of green energy. And they're putting, what, $500-600 billion into it?
I see.
Now, the Europeans would want me to call this a subsidy, undisguised subsidy. I'm a former chairman of the subsidies committee of the GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. I know a little bit about it. A subsidy, by definition, is something which is a charge on the state exchequer. So if the state is spending $500-600 billion, it is a kind of incentivization or subsidy. Now, India doesn't have the resources of the US, nor does anybody else to spend $600. But if it's a choice in terms of a policy decision of shifting from expenditure on fossil fuels to shifting on green hydrogen, I can tell you political differences, ideological consideration, everyone will say much better to go to green hydrogen, because what will happen? You will be doing climate saving, you will be putting the green energy to use for yourself and your future generation, and that will be a save the planet movement. How optimistic am I?
Yes.
I think the target we have of 5 million metric tons per annum by 2030.
Okay.
2030 is not far off, by the way. We're already in 2024. I think it's a conservative target.
Okay.
It's a conservative target because green hydrogen is one of those brilliant children, genius in that DNA and everywhere, but doesn't have a single parent. So everybody's into green hydrogen. My colleague, the MNRE minister, thinks he is the headmaster of green hydrogen. My colleague, the steel minister, thinks he is the this thing, and rightly so, because they all want an ownership in that.
Okay.
I keep making one statement, and which is the more important one, that green hydrogen will succeed when we start using it in our refineries. So I have one company which has 11 refineries. They're already using it in 2. He's promised he'll put in another 2. But I think this competitive urge to move towards green hydrogen will go. Now we have a cabinet decision, and we have a PLI provisioning of 19,700 crores. The point I'm making again is, it's good to have a little bit of cabinet ministers saying, no, I will do it, I will do it. But at the end of the day, everyone is moving towards green hydrogen. I think it's going to be a time before we reach the European point that we will only use green steel. I need to get the green hydrogen. If I get enough green hydrogen, I can do whatever I want with it. I can power ships with it. It's like ethanol. Now, if the European Union mandates that 5% of the sustainable aviation fuel, or what we call aviation turbine fuel, 5% of it has to be sustainable ethanol, then you'll need more ethanol. And where are you going to produce the ethanol? You're going to produce it either in Brazil or in India.
Right.
Because no other country has this country, maybe China. So I am an enthusiast, advocate, and strong supporter of green fuels. But unlike other enthusiasts, I also have my feet firmly on the ground.
Okay.
Because whilst we make the transition, and a transition by definition is something you do from one point to another, I still have to rely on fossil fuel.
Yes.
Therefore, I think with India's demand shooting up, two things will happen. Our emphasis on exploration and production of traditional fuels will go up.
Okay.
Our increase in refining capacity will be demonstrated. We were, when I became minister in this with this ministry, we were about 252 million metric tons per annum. I think we should be heading towards 300 now. The Prime Minister, in fact, when he talks sometimes about 450. I stop at 400.
Okay.
We are in the happy situation today, very happy situation, that India is progressing on all fronts. And I think the credit for that goes to the commitment on sustainability by the boss, the Honorable Prime Minister, who in fact changed our position. I mean, up till Paris, the Indian position was very understandable. Developing country, not my fault. You, the developed industrialized countries, cause the pollution. Therefore, the polluters pay. We have not given that up. But we have also said that we owe a debt to ourselves and to our next generation. So I can do the blame game. It can go on for till the cows come home. But I meanwhile need to transit.
Yes.
I need to transit. I need to transition. So we have started that. So I think that today, with reasonable confidence, I can say that our biofuel story will succeed. Our CBG story will succeed.
So what's CBG?
Compressed biogas.
Compressed biogas.
Our making of biofuels, second generation, comes from making it from agricultural waste. We will even make a third generation biofuels from industrial gases. Our CNG production is going up by 18% every year.
Okay.
But we are still 50% dependent.
Okay.
Our import dependence on crude oil was 85%, but with the economy booming, it's gone up to 87, 88%.
I see.
But that is because of the criminal neglect earlier. We had not put the emphasis on E&P 10 years ago or 15 years ago. We're doing it now.
So what's E&P?
Exploration and production.
Got it.
Now we have, and I want to wind up this section of our discussion, we have something like 3.5 million square kilometers of sedimentary basin.
Okay.
But the problem is, there's no point that you're having a sedimentary basin where you can go and prospect and find oil and gas. You're not able to access it. So what we did last year, if I remember correctly, we opened up 1 million square kilometers of that sedimentary basin to exploration and production.
Okay.
And it's already showing result. Second thing, people, there are only 4 or 5 big companies in the world. I can name them. Chevron, Exxon, BP, and so on. They will come and explore, provided they have a guarantee that once they find the oil, they're going to be part of the action.
Yes.
Now, countries which are very vulnerable, they don't have any hesitation in handing it all over to them so that you come and spend your money and then oil becomes yours. They get a small trickle. India is not like that. But today we have gone into a situation where we are happy to partner with them and told them, if you have any problem in spending your money, we will even incentivize your exploration and production.
Okay.
And we'll give you the data. So we've taken all the data from the sedimentary basin. We have sent it to the University of Texas in Houston, United States, and there it's available for anybody who wants to access. You see, once you have the data available, then you can use your experts to do a forensic and find out kahan pe milega. And I think one of those companies, Exxon is spending 20% of its supercomputing capacity on analyzing Indian data.
I see.
So we have a very good prospect. Further increases in biofuel, ethanol made from sugar, maize, parali, agricultural waste. Third generation, we have two generation plants operating, one in Panipat, elsewhere. Compressed biogas, we are now going into it in a big way. CNG, cars are coming on CNG. We have now laid a pipeline. I think our pipeline today has gone up from 14,000 kilometers in 2014 to about 22,500 kilometers. And we are going to take that pipeline another 11,000 kilometers to about 33,000 kilometers. So the whole country will be covered by a pipeline for natural gas. We import it. It comes either in liquid form. We gasify it, send it, or whatever the plants are required at the ports are there. And I think the green hydrogen story, about which not much is known, it is beginning to register in a big way. Why do I say this? Let me tell you. A little science. If a refinery moves from, say, its traditional feed into green hydrogen, into the making of green hydrogen, I think it's a very positive sign. If people have water transport moving on green hydrogen, as we saw, I think a demonstration project in Kerala recently, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
If we have big buses doing demonstration rides in Delhi, 15 of them are going to be plying, as demonstration, not charging any fees, but shows that you can, hop in and hop out of a bus. It's using green hydrogen. I flagged off 1 or 2 buses, I think, from the National Stadium. If you look at all this, I think issues of energy availability, energy affordability, and sustainability are being well addressed. Why is availability crucial? Because a country like India is no longer even remembers that there's a shortage of energy anywhere.
We don't.
No, luckily, but there was a time recently when there were massive floods and flood-like situation in the northeast. But our OMCs sent their distributors with cylinders on their shoulders to the points of consumption. Affordability, we're the only country in the world where prices over a 2 or 3 year reference period have actually come down.
Okay.
So we have mavericks like one politician who said, 400 पार की बात इसलिए होगी क्योंकि petrol 100 से ऊपर है. I saw about 100 guys trolling him, telling him, the only place where petrol costs over 100 rupees are the non-BJP states, and few of them. Okay. And the states with which he is associated. All the BJP states, it's 90 plus. And there's a difference, and this is more important, of 14, 15 rupees per liter of petrol and about 10, 11 rupees of per liter of diesel. Finally, on sustainability, as I said, you need to have availability, affordability. The rest of the world prices were going up 40%, 43%. India came down 2%, 3%. And finally, sustainability. And I told you I spent more time on sustainability because I think that is where the discussion is going to take place. Now, I want to share with you one final comment. Will the transport systems of the future be based on one or the other? I said no. I think they will get a hybrid model. Okay. And then the most successful cars will be, four-wheelers, will be those that use electric and biofuels. Okay. Like the Japanese Toyota Mirai, this is the hybrid, electric and petrol will go on till you get more ethanol. So that's why one of my companies has now launched what is called E100. I want to tell you, Prime Minister launched something called E20, that is 20% blended fuel. During the India Energy Week in Bangalore last year. Okay. We already have it flying in 12,000 retail points. But recently, I think a month ago, one of the companies introduced an E100. So in about 400 dispensing stations in 2 or 3 states, you have E100 being marketed. Okay. So you can go and get E100. Now what happens is once you have E100, a lot of people will go and switch from petrol to ethanol. But you need availability. Now in Brazil, when I was ambassador, I could remember you would go to a dispensing station in the morning, depending on the price of petrol, which was necessarily determined by the international price. Yes. And the price of ethanol, you could decide whether you want 40% of one and 60% of the other, or the other way around, 60% of ethanol and 40% of petrol. I believe choice. If you are a driver and you're filling up 30 liters, you might even come to a situation if ethanol is slightly more expensive than petrol. But because you know that petrol is toxic and will produce toxic vapors, you might say, no, I'll go for this thing. I'll go for the cleaner fuel, even if it's a little more expensive. Earlier, we were getting resistance from the automobile manufacturers. No, it's called the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, SIAM. They said, nahi, abhi to bikri hai, what's the point? I had to bring in a delegation from Brazil, the same manufacturers who here sell cars. Why was 20% blending introduced? Because people said, up to a 20% blend, you don't need to change any parts of the car. Okay. Because there's no corrosion. But the same guys are selling E85 cars in Brazil. So now what's happened? They want to sell E85 cars here. So I think there's a very strong transformation which is underway. It's like a silent revolution. And I think before we know, hamare yahan to bhed chaal hoti hai. Before you know, everybody will move towards this thing. 70% of our vehicular traffic on the roads today is 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers. Right. And my submission to you is the bulk of them will move to replaceable batteries. Okay. Lithium-ion batteries.
I will conclude here the part 1. For me, this has been a very fascinating conversation. I would love to know your thoughts, like what it is for you, like because I don't have that much knowledge in this arena, so it's quite fascinating to understand what India is planning. I don't really understand what in Europe we have the Green Deal, which a lot of people are protesting against. I heard people saying, well, it's based on laws that are against the physics and stuff. So I really don't know what's written there. But what he's talking about, the reason why it's fascinating for me, because maybe a few years ago, I had a chat with my dentist, and she was talking that the future is hydrogen cars, actually. And now he's talking about hydrogen. And what he was saying that it's quite silent, that people don't know about it and don't know much. Like I'm not into, hydrogen cars or whatever for me to go out of my way to go and research. But it's certainly very fascinating that he's responsible for that. He sees the future within that and the effects. Now, when I still am conflicted on the price because, like the prices of fuel have huge impact on everything exactly what they said at the very beginning, that energy kind of really moves the society, and then who kind of owns it can dictate things, etc. But certainly, I don't know, like you will only be able to tank your hydrogen, diesel, whatever, based on the state of your status of your wallet, right? Like how much money you got. Like that is the sad part about the environment. And like unfortunately right now the cost of the alternatives are still very much high. And I love when he was talking about availability, sustainability, and what was the third one? Affordability. Yeah, the key one, affordability. Because it will have an impact on like if you're a bakery, you're delivering your bakeries around, and your cost is going to increase as a result, so you have to up your prices for you to make profit, right? So it's an interesting one. I found it fascinating that there is this initiative to build that kind of pipeline across India. As I said, like I think that maybe in Europe people are talking maybe a bit more on electricity, but I honestly can't really much comment on that because I don't know much. I just only know from what our Prime Minister has mentioned, that we need to prepare ourselves for the future, and it's going to take another 10 or 15 or so years. But from the point of a clean energy, that's the future. And we kind of all know how the electric cars, and he says that there will still be electric cars, but in my mind, I don't quite get how we have electric cars. I understand that Mr. Musk really wants to have the evolution, but he's really like damaging the environment. So, and it's not like, I think I read it in a New Scientist or somewhere quite some time ago. Now we're talking years, about how that kind of works, and what do you have to do in order to get the source material for the batteries, etc. So yeah, and interestingly now my dentist was saying that the hydrogen cars are the future. So I'm very curious. I'm very actually curious. What do you think? What is the future? Do you reckon? Because he obviously, I don't know, maybe we won't even live that far. But do you believe that what he's saying, that hybrid is the future, or do you see that there will be maybe hybrid in the sense like there will be electric, biofuel, and still like the kind of standard diesel and whatever petrol type of situation? Or do you reckon that it has a potential to just go towards one end of the spectrum? Like even Dubai has realized that the oil kind of dominance is coming to an end, and they are looking for different ways to diversify UAE and stuff like that. So it's a huge topic, perhaps not maybe as discussed as the importance it deserves or it has. Fascinating. I love when intelligent people speak, and I don't obviously know who this guy actually really is, but wow, he seems really educated, really cool, and I just had like one comment, and I just really out of curiosity wanted to understand what's that turban on his head? What's the meaning? If you could let me know in the comments, that would be great. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching the part 1 of this video with me. If you did enjoy, please give a thumbs up, share, like, and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in part 2. Until then, please do take care. I am sending lots of love. Bye-bye.